This is my latest little handheld. It is the SNK limited edition Super Pocket. These are the ultra portable handhelds from Blaze, who made the Evercade series, and it's also compatible with the Evercade cartridges. It's got 14 games built in. It looks awesome, but is it any good? So this is my latest handheld acquisition. It is the Hyper Megatech Neo Geo MVS edition of the Super Pocket from Blaze, which is part of the Evercade family. Evercade, if you are unfamiliar with it, you can buy little plug-in retro style cartridges which have a small amount of ROMs, say 10 or so ROMs on them, and they are officially licensed and you can play them on the various Evercade handhelds and home console. The handhelds I've been a fan of for a while, but these are new to me. These are the Super Pocket. They've been out for a bit. There's a few different ones. There's like a Taito one, a Capcom, an Atari, and so on. But the one that really caught my interest was the Neo Geo edition when it was announced. Now they've got a standard edition in black with the gold text and the grey buttons like the old Neo Geo AES console, the home console. But this one is styled after the Neo Geo MVS arcade system. The games were identical. That was the novelty of the Neo Geo at the time. So the actual insides and the games included on this are just the same as the standard edition, which is good for you because if you wanted one of these but you couldn't get this limited edition one, which I had to kind of battle for on a pre-order, the standard edition is still available. So yeah, this one is long since sold out. I feel very lucky to have got one and wanted to share it with you, but I'm also kind of tempted to get the black and gold one as well, and that's still available for less than £50, which we may find out in this video is a bit of a bargain. In terms of the design of the handheld itself, it's nice and simple, very reminiscent of a Game Boy Color, but without the battery bulge at the back. It does have shoulder buttons, 2 sets of shoulder buttons, which seems like overkill for a lot of the games that you'd play on here, but it's nice to have them in case you need them. And if you've got systems that have more than 20 games, you can use R2 and L2 to scroll a bit more quickly between the games on the menu screen. On the front face, we've got the ABXY in the traditional Neo Geo arcade cabinet colors. And while I speak about this, if you are unfamiliar with Neo Geo and you're not sure why this might appeal to me in this case, when I was growing up and everybody had Sega Mega Drive and Super Nintendo and so on, there was this kind of mythical console called the Neo Geo. I never knew anyone that actually had one, but everybody knew about it. It was a very expensive home console. It had very expensive games. It was renowned for having games that cost over £100 each, even at the time. That was astronomical, and obviously now there's a huge collector's market for them and they get even higher prices. So to be able to get something budget with the Neo Geo branding and the awesome Neo Geo games on it is fantastic. I never owned the home console of the Neo Geo, but I was lucky enough to have my own Neo Geo MVS arcade cabinet for a while and a collection of the ludicrously giant cartridges to go with it. So getting one in the MVS style for the handheld was a no-brainer for me. It was a real throwback to some good times there. And of course, I've played lots and lots of Neo Geo games since on other emulator handhelds. But the thing about these kind of cartridges is that they are legit. Like these kind of handhelds, a lot of the time the handhelds that I review, you can put SD cards in, you can load them up with your own ROMs and so on. And there's obviously the legal grey area or kind of straight cut illegal fact of using ROMs on these things that some people will be uncomfortable with. So this is kind of geared up to a different market. On all of the Evercade cartridges and on this machine itself, the cartridge I showed you there is actually blank, but all of the Evercade cartridges have officially licensed games on them, and this is no exception. This console itself has a whole bunch of Neo Geo games built into it that are all officially licensed. Blaze have also announced some follow-up cartridges. There's a Neo Geo Arcade 1, 2 and 3 cartridge going to be coming out, so you can plug those in and play on it. I have actually got a collection of Evercade cartridges and consoles. However, they are all currently packed away, so I can't test them out on here. But what I wanted to review here is just the handheld itself, and it's pretty good actually. It's got a couple of drawbacks that I'll talk about as I go, but the form factor, as I say, is very Game Boy. It's got a kind of a floating D-pad similar to kind of like the Sega Mega Drive style, with the circular area that all presses down. It's kind of flat on the disc and then the scoop in the middle. I do find I tend to move to the side to press rather than do it from the center. The buttons are on a silicone membrane and there's a nice resistance to those. I think they feel pretty comfortable. There's a menu button at the top, start and select down here, which are on slightly clickier switches, and a central speaker. Although there is one speaker, it is quite loud, and there's also vents on the sides and on the back here, and if you've got it turned up, the sound will kind of come out through those as well. So in terms of the branding, it is kind of over the top, but it kind of works. It should look really cluttered, but I think it looks fantastic. There's a nice symmetry to it. It's got a kind of nod to the Game Boy Pocket lens here with the Neo Geo edition graphics on here. I think that this looks fantastic. I like the look of it in the pictures, and in the flesh it looks great. The color of the red plastic is nice. It's got kind of a nice matte finish to it. Contrasting white buttons on the back, as I've mentioned before, the shoulder buttons, but also the volume up and down here. And on the bottom, it's actually a slide switch to switch on, and we'll switch it on now and take a look. So the screen itself is way better than I was anticipating, actually. Let's try and get a better angle of that. There we go. Yeah, it's an IPS screen, and the blacks on it are pretty good. I'm quite happy with the kind of sort of contrast of the display. The colors have a bit of warmth to them. The sound is pretty good. Can sound a little bit tinny, but as I say, when you turn it up a little bit, you get a bit of sound out from the back as well, so it kind of balances out a little bit. We've got nice menu music. We can see how much battery we've got left. As you scroll through, it gives you the cover art for the games and the name. In terms of the games that are on it, this is the box. I had done a whole unboxing video and then realized that the whole thing was out of focus. So yeah, we're starting out of the box here. The box is nothing special in particular, but it is quite nice design. There's like a spot UV so that we've got the shiny and the matte finish there, but it's just a picture of the console and the logo on the front. But on the back, it tells us which games are on there. There are 14 built-in games, and for the most part, it's a nice selection. There's some shoot 'em ups, there's some fighting games, there's a driving game on there, there's a sports game, but some of my favorite Neo Geo games are the puzzles, and they're sorely lacking. It's a shame we didn't get like Puzzle Bobble or Magical Drop. Again, it could well be down to licensing because these are older games, and yeah, it's just whatever Evercade can get the rights to use on their consoles, I suppose. We haven't got the freedom that we get when you're just grabbing all of these ROMs and sticking them on an SD card. But the games included, we've got a list up at the top. There's Alpha Mission 2, Blazing Star, Fatal Fury Special, King of the Monsters 2, Last Resort, Metal Slug X, Mutation Nation, Overtop, Samurai Showdown 2, Sengoku 3, Shock Troopers, Second Squad, Soccer Brawl, The Last Blade, Top Hunter, Roddy and Cathy. So as I say, a decent selection. I looked ahead at what is on the 3 cartridges that are going to be released, and they were disappointingly similar, like to these, just different Metal Slug games or different Samurai Showdown games or whatever else. So I was kind of uninspired by those, but having this as a little standalone unit with those 14 games built in is pretty cool. And that's before we even get onto the fact that this thing has some of my favorite Neo Geo games, ones that I owned on cartridge when I had my arcade machine. In particular, we've got Blazing Star, which is a phenomenal shoot 'em up, probably the best one on the system. But in addition to that, we've got Alpha Mission 2, another shoot 'em up. I do love my scrolling shooters, and Last Resort as well, which is another one that I owned on cartridge, and it's just great, although it's absolutely rock hard. An absolute classic in terms of Neo Geo, and what it's possibly best known for is the Metal Slug series, and this console includes Metal Slug X. So in our first instance of actually trying out the software, we'll press A to launch. It hangs on this loading screen for a little bit. Kind of feels like it's on for a little bit too long, considering it should be just launching straight from a cartridge, but it will eventually load. And then whenever you load a Neo Geo ROM, or whenever you load any Neo Geo arcade games, you always get that kind of glitchy green screen first before it boots up into the system and the game. Now, all of these are the arcade versions of the game. I did wonder if this particular machine had the arcade versions and the black version had the home versions of the games. These systems, and the reason why the Neo Geo was so sought after, is that they were one-to-one ports. Like, the arcade games were phenomenal, but the home system had the exact same game. They weren't like the conversions that we got on the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo. So that's what made that console particularly special. And with it being such a high price item, to be able to get something, as I say, Neo Geo branded for less than £50. In the case of this one, it did cost a little more. The limited edition was $69.99, so I basically paid £20 extra for a different colour, but I've no regrets. I think it looks amazing. Interestingly, they are currently on from the scalpers on eBay for about $200 at the moment. I don't know if they're selling or not, but yeah, people are being very optimistic there. We shall see. I'm just quite happy playing on the thing. The actual display, if we can get a better view, is really, really nice. The colours are deep and rich, the contrast is good, and you also get a bit of control over how it looks, although maybe not as much as you would on the other handheld consoles I'm used to. Like, you can't adjust the brightness and things like that as such, but the brightness level and the contrast are pretty good in the first place. So we can press on the menu button. It brings up a smart little list. The interface is nice and clean. We can save state, we can load state, we can look at the controls. We can't change them, but we can go in there and see what the different controls are for the game. A, to go in, and B, to come back out. We've also got the display, which does give us some nice options. Oh, do you know, I keep pressing B as confirm, even though I just told you that that was to come back out. So that's something to get used to. But if I go into display, we can choose between the original ratio, which it's on now, or the Pixel Perfect, which is slightly smaller. We can also put scan lines on there in terms of subtle or strong, if you want that authentic CRT kind of effect. So in terms of the Pixel Perfect, if we just kind of look at that main screen there, you can see that it's sort of cut down slightly. It's slightly smaller display than it was on the other one. Or we can go all the way out with full screen, which I thought might look terrible. I thought it might be all like widescreen. It actually looks pretty good. So yeah, we've got all these options. All three of them look good. And to be honest, the scan lines look quite good as well. That's all down to personal preference. I'm not a huge fan of scan lines, but if you like them, you've got the option on here. And to be fair, like my old arcade cabinet had a CRT screen in there. So if I want this to look a bit more authentic, I can go on display, scan lines. I'll just put them on subtle for now. And you know, on here, you probably won't see a whole lot of difference, but in the flesh it does add quite a nice little retro touch to it. So when you're playing the arcade games, very similar if you've had any kind of emulator handhelds before, the select button usually adds to your credits, and then you can spend your credits to play the game. You press start or A to start the game, and in the case of Metal Slug, you just choose your character and you get going. So if you are starting to play and you're like, oh, hang on a minute, what's which button do? You can always just press on there, go to controls. So A fires your gun, B jumps, X throws grenades. So we can come back out of there, fire the gun, jump, throw a grenade. So let's just make our way along, and already I jump instead of shooting. That's my quality memory at work there. But yeah, this game is awesome. If you've never played any of the Metal Slug games, Metal Slug X is a nice entry. The original Metal Slug is on one of the upcoming cartridges, if you're a bit of a purist. But generally, they all follow the same kind of style of gameplay, and the artwork is really distinctive, kind of cartoony. They're just fantastic games. And like I say, if you make a bit of progress and you can press on here, you can go to save, and then you can choose whichever slot you want to save your game. We've got a maximum of 6 slots per game, and you just choose that slot. And then next time when I go on to, say, load, I can load up that slot and it gives me a little screenshot of where I was up to. And you can do that for all of the games on the system. If you have had enough of the game, you can go to quit and just bring yourself back out, and that takes you to the menu. Other games that are on there, we've got Overtop, which is kind of like a racing game. I'm not going to show you every single individual game. I just want to talk about the controls and the interface and the screen and so on. The sound is good. I have turned it down so you can hear me talking, but the sound is good enough. However, it will output stereo through the headphone socket on the bottom. In fact, while we're looking at the bottom, we've got a headphone socket there, 3.5mm jack socket. We've got USB-C for charging. The console comes with a USB-C to USB-A cable, so I wouldn't put it on a kind of a high-powered charge like for a fast charge for a phone or something, because it might possibly cause it some damage. Also, you've got some LEDs on the bottom. You can see when it's switched on, we've got a blue LED. The one that's here, when you are charging, it lights up red, and when it's fully charged, that one goes green. Now, speaking of the sound, I recently got these really cool retro style headphones from Fio. They're the Snow Sky headphones, and yeah, I feel like proper Marty McFly wearing these. But when I tried them out on here, I'll just show you what happens. Watch it work perfectly now. But if I turn the volume up on the speaker, so we've got the sound coming out of the console. Obviously, when you plug headphones in, that will cut out the sound, but it's kind of a little unreliable. Sometimes it comes out of the headphones, but then when you push in, it kind of comes and goes. I can't quite get them to lock in. You've got to have them slightly out and turn them a bit. And even then, when it kind of cuts the sound from the console. You might just get mono on the headphones just from one side, and you have to kind of wiggle around. On further inspection, I think it might be due to the amount of plastic around the socket, because the socket doesn't quite come up flush. It's set inside slightly, but the end of my headphone plug is slightly too big to fit inside that space, so it kind of sits at the surface and just doesn't quite feel like it connects. This could have been rectified really easily by having a slightly larger opening on the red plastic. You can see it just comes up to where that beveled edge kind of cuts out, so maybe they were stuck a little bit there, but I would rather have had this slightly further out so it was easier to plug my headphones in. So when I'm using this, to be honest, I will probably mainly be using the built-in speaker. So that's one of my gripes with it. The other gripe we've fortunately not encountered yet, but I have had it crash on me 2 or 3 times, usually when I'm trying to exit a game or open a game, not during the game itself. So we'll have a quick look at this one while we're on, because it's quite a different sort of game to your usual Neo Geo, in terms of it being a racing game. So it almost feels like driving a radio controlled car. As always with these games, it kind of gives you a little tutorial before you start, and then you can choose your car and you can choose your color, and yeah, you can get started. So let's choose that one and go with a yellow, and then just have a quick little race. I wasn't paying attention to the instructions, so before it starts I can go to controls. A is accelerate, B is brake. So that's quite a handy feature for someone like me with ADHD, where you forget things as soon as you find them out. You've got a little map overhead so that you can plan ahead for your turns, and then you get an arrow turning up on screen to tell you at the very last minute when you're turning, or you can crash like I very often do. But it's quite a fun little game, this one. I like how your headlights come on when you're in a tunnel. There's little features like that that are quite good fun. Anyway, let's have a look at some other ones. And also I want to see if when I quit I might end up with the glitch happening. It's not happened at all yet. In terms of games, it's happened on when I tried to launch The Last Blade yesterday. It crashed, so we'll see how that goes. I mean, to be fair, if everything works perfectly today, I am absolutely happy with that. It's just if it ends up glitching out, and you'll get to see that. So again, you get that kind of green screen. That is fine. That's what you always get with Neo Geo. Then you get your boot screen. And then if you start pumping in the coins by pressing select, it goes to your launch screen, and then you can start playing. So there are a lot of fighting games on this. Some of them are one-on-one games, like Samurai Showdown, or like this one. Some of them are more like scrolling fighters, like your Double Dragon type games. So yeah, if you like fighting games, you will love this. And to be fair, if you like fighting games, you are probably already quite familiar with Neo Geo. Let's just try a reset, because reset has caused it to crash before. Now what reset does is it basically exit and reopens the game. So it should just kind of relaunch, and that's when, see, I can hear if I turn it up, I can hear the menu screen music, but nothing else has happened. I'm assuming if I press A, even though I can't see the menu screen, it might launch the game, and then if it launches the game, hopefully that might come back on. So this is where we would have the loading screen, and then maybe we'll get the game itself launch, even though we can't see it. There we go. So it's like it's still functioning, but the display disappears. It doesn't so really when I press reset, it should relaunch the game altogether like that. But what often happens is it kind of goes back to the main menu but doesn't display at all. So yeah, on a brand new system, that's a little disappointing. As far as I'm aware, there's no kind of online updates for it. I'm going to have to look on the website and see if there's any firmware updates for it or anything like that, because we could possibly do that via the USB. But yeah, that's one of the things that kind of disappointed me a little bit. Let's just try a different game anyway. I don't want to gripe too much, because for the price, like especially if you get the black edition and it costs you less than I'm trying to say nice things about it, but we've got that blank screen again. So it's frustrating that this is happening. It's particularly frustrating for me because I'm not really in a position where I'll just switch off and back on. I'm not really in a position where I could return it for a replacement because it was such a limited edition. You know, these are the only ones that they made and that got sold. So yeah, a bit frustrating with that. And it's the one thing that puts me off perhaps getting the black edition, because this has happened quite a few times to me. So we'll go into our menu and maybe choose a different game. So we've got Alpha Mission. We'll choose something that's a little different. We've had a fighting game. We'll go on Soccer Brawl. So Soccer Brawl is pretty much what it sounds like. It's kind of a violent football kind of game, or soccer if you prefer. So yeah, that's quite a fun one. I'm not very good at it, but again, we'll enter our coins and we'll start the game, and we'll see how it goes when it comes to restarting or exiting this game. So we'll start the game. We'll just get going. League mode. I'm not going to be playing for long, so it doesn't really matter. Again, the display for this thing is lovely. I'll choose England there, and we're going against the USA, and then we can choose our stadium. We've got SNK Stadium in Japan and the Superdome in America, so we'll go with the Superdome, and then it launches again. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Speedball, this one, if you've ever played that, or Speedball 2. So yeah, first game. The blacks, I mean, you can tell by the fact that there's very little contrast against the bezel there. The contrast on this display is really, really nice. The D-pad functions pretty well, actually. You know, when the buttons, there's very little I have to think about when I'm using those. But when I'm using the D-pad, in terms of moving around, it's good. I do find I tend to move a little bit more to one side or another to navigate my way around. Let's just try a reset again and see if that works this time. There we go, that's more like it, and then it'll launch the game again, hopefully. Or we can just quit altogether and it takes us to the menu. So I don't know whether it's tied into certain games causing that to happen, because it had happened with the last Blade before. But we'll play something else. Let's go with Alpha Mission 2, because that will give the D-pad a little bit more of a workout. I'm still unsure, because it's so smooth, there's like no grips on there, and I find I'm kind of sliding around, but it could just be because it's particularly warm at the moment and my thumbs are maybe a little bit sweaty. But that little boot up and the animation and the music just kind of always gets me in the nostalgia every single time. Alpha Mission 2 is another one that I had. So it's just another scrolling shooter, but it looks really nice. The size of this screen, some of the kind of shooters, it's difficult to keep track of the little details and the bullets and things like that, but I think it looks great and it plays well. And as I say, the D-pad, when I'm moving to the right or the left, I kind of find it's not really a purposeful thing, but I find that I'm moving my thumb to that area of the D-pad, so I don't really get that instant reaction. It's not particularly comfortable for me to just sit right in the middle and try and navigate my way around. I just naturally tend to move my thumb in the particular directions when I'm going. So this console is a unique proposition, really. If we just quit and go to the main menu and turn it down, as I say, it's a unique proposition. It's a really good one for people who maybe get overwhelmed with the huge amounts of games on the standard emulator systems with the SD cards and so on, and there's just so many games you get decision paralysis, which is where you just cannot choose a game. With this, with just 14 games to choose, you're likely to spend a decent amount of time on each one. Also, legally, ethically, using the ROMs, some people might be much more comfortable using something like this to play the games that are legitimately licensed. So that is definitely something that might be a plus. The selection of games on here is plenty to keep you occupied for quick trips or little sit downs. I've found I'm picking it up when I see it. It just sits on the side, and that colour scheme and pattern on the front is just too inviting for me to leave it sat there, and I'll pick it up and have a quick blast on one of these games. So as I say, the black edition of this is just under £50, and if that's kind of within your budget, something like this would be great. But if you want to play a little bit more but you're still interested in playing Neo Geo, I recently got this from PowKiddy, LITNXT sent it to me for review. I've been playing on it quite a bit. I'm going to do a video about the recent variety of clamshell Game Boy Advance SP type consoles that have turned up on the market, so I'll be coming up with that one soon. But this runs RetroArch, which is capable of emulating a whole range of different machines. So with these kind of machines, you have an SD card that is loaded up with a whole load of games for a whole load of different systems, and you've got an interface like this that is really rather nice. And if we look at the size of the screen, it is pretty big actually in comparison to this one. The console itself is actually quite a bit larger than this one, so you know, it depends on what you want, but when it folds down, it's relatively compact and portable. So yeah, if we go into Neo Geo, you'll notice there 170 games, so more than 10 times as many as on this little handheld here. But it is you know, not without its limitations as well. But if we go in there, we've got a whole load of games to choose from, and when we go through on this, it will not only show us the cover art, also the main logo and a screenshot, which I think the screenshots are great because you can tell what sort of game it is. But if we go to the Metal Slug series and we go all the way down to Metal Slug X, then when I launch that, and if I launch it on here as well, we can get a little bit of a side-by-side comparison when it loads. This screen is quite a bit brighter, not quite as strong on the contrast. Side by side, one display is definitely bigger than the other. I find the colours on this are a lot richer, a little bit more washed out on this screen. Honestly, both consoles are fantastic little budget options. This one, you've got more versatility in terms of your options to change things, but this one is a bit more tailored specifically to the Neo Geo console and the games. So they're both really serving different purposes. You'll look at these and you will know which one appeals to you, or if you're like me, both of them will, and you know, they all serve their different purposes. But I just thought, if we're talking about the black edition of this being just under £50, if you get this from LITNXT with the SD card, you'll be paying about the same. This has got a 128 gig SD card in it, so it's a really cool little console. A lot of the time with these, you have to make your own little tweaks, set them up how you want them. You've got lots of settings so you can get it just right for you, which might appeal to you. Alternatively, that might come across as a bit too much like hard work. So something like this where you can just switch on and play. You know, this one, anyone could use it. You could give it to anyone as a gift and not worry about them struggling to be able to operate it. The instructions for how to use the menus are very, very clear. The interface is good, it's simple, the D-pad's good, the A, B, X, Y buttons are fantastic. I'm still a little unsold on these, but in terms of the design on the back, you've got this little scoop where when you're playing, your fingers will generally sit there, so the shoulder buttons don't tend to get in your way. So yeah, there's a couple of drawbacks. I'm not a big fan of moving around on the D-pad. I have to kind of slide around on that a little bit much. The fact that the consoles cartridges that are coming up are not a particularly great selection of games for my tastes is something that puts me off getting any more of those. The fact that it crashes, that's the big one. It's never crashed just during gameplay. It's always when you're kind of going down to quit your game that it happens, and most of the time it's fine, but when it does happen, it's frustrating. And to be honest, even for a budget console, that shouldn't happen. That should have got through, you know, quality testing. That was on my first day of using it. It's happened on the second day, and it's happened today as well. So my honest judgment on this is, if you were thinking about splashing out on one of these from eBay, if you spent £200 on it, you would be disappointed. But if you managed to get one of these at launch, like I did for £69.99, or even better, if you got the black edition for £49.99, I think you can't complain. I think being able to get a entire Neo Geo branded system with a built-in screen with 14 built-in fully licensed games for less than half the price of one of the games, even when I was a kid in the early 90s, I'd say you're doing pretty well. As a novelty item, as a display piece, it's good. As a fun little chuck it in your bag, play it while you're on public transport or little breaks at work, or just sitting down and playing some old retro games of an evening, I think this is good. It's a nice little gift option for people who are into their retro games at that price point. And yeah, I just think, yeah, it's got its drawbacks, but it's my first experience of using one of the Super Pocket handhelds, and yeah, I'm pleased with it. So that's it. I can't really say that I'm not entirely disappointed with the fact that this thing has drawbacks. It feels at first glance like a really nice, simple, robust solution that you can just simply flick a switch to turn it on, and away you go. You've got your selection of games. There's no messing about with curating your ROMs. There's no settings to mess around with. Everything just works straight out of the box. You choose your game, you play it. You've got a nice simple interface for saving your games, to find out what your controls are. It has got so much going for it, but the fact that it has crashed on me more than a few times makes it kind of difficult to recommend. I think if you're watching this now when I'm just publishing the video and you can get hold of one of these for like less than £50, then great, I'd say go for it. I'd say it's a bargain. And with it being Neo Geo, I will say the price of these things will definitely go up. This one is evidence to that. I got it as a limited edition. They made 1,000 of these. I got it from Funstock in the UK. I'll link their page, but obviously you can't get these particular editions anymore. But this one was like $69.99. Already people are trying to sell them on eBay for 200. Neo Geo stuff is just very collectible. So I would say for the price of less than £50, the standard edition should be well worth your money, a decent investment. Just, it's not quite as solid and robust as I was hoping it might be. I don't know, because there's quite a few editions of these. There's Capcom, there's the Atari, and so on. So anyone else who's had one of these, did they suffer with similar issues, or is this just like my unit? Has anyone else had that happen to them? Let me know in the comments. If you quite like the look of this thing, I will be doing a more detailed review of it soon. However, if you want to look at that, I'll leave a link in the description for LITNXT. They usually provide me with my review units for handhelds. You even get a discount if you use Joe Bleeps as a code at the checkout, but I'll leave the details for that in the description. So this thing is part of what I said before is the Evercade stable of consoles, and has a whole ecosystem of all these different consoles that work with the same cartridges across all the different ones. It's a great little system. I have been invested in it from quite early on. I've got the original handheld, I've got the EXP, which is the kind of updated edition of the handheld. I've got the home console version. I've got a whole bunch of the games. As I said, they're packed up at the moment, so I couldn't test any on this. But if you want to know a little bit more about it, if you're curious, I have made some videos about those in the past. I will try and remember to link them up here for you to go and watch. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.